Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Bible Thumper Podcast, where somebody's got to say it. My name is Patrick Hayes, your regular host, and with me tonight, all the way out in Paris, France, my good friend, Caleb Jenks. Caleb, thank you for joining us this evening.
Good to be on here.
I didn't know that they decorated so poorly in Paris, France, just by the looks of the background of the... Is that a homeless shelter you're in, or a youth hostel?
Oh man, that's funny. You shouldn't make me laugh. I'm just recovering from a cough. But yeah, my office is probably decorated a little sparse. But I am not in Paris yet. I am in Texas. So.
Oh, you're still in Rosebud, Texas. Okay,
I sure am.
Well, we are excited to have you check in a month when you make your way over to Europe. So that'll be exciting. Hopefully they'll have the internet over there and everything will work out. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, we'll see. I should have some Wi-Fi somewhere. Get on a McDonald's Wi-Fi somewhere.
Okay, Caleb. So what I've been talking about for the last several weeks with everybody I've been going over the topic of money. The big reason I'm doing this is because in January at my church, I'm going to be doing a free financial seminar every Wednesday night from 6 to 8:30, or maybe from 6:30 to 8. Yeah, that sounds right. 6:30 to 8 p.m. In Grand Junction, Colorado. Even though we reach people all over the country and the world with this podcast, if anyone from Grand Junction is listening, we'd love to have you come and show up to that. And I'm just trying to get people kind of thinking about finances. So we've been talking a lot about money, and especially with Christmas being right around the corner, it is the number one time where Christians in America decide to massively go into debt to try to prove to their children in one morning that they love them rather than spending time with them throughout the year. And then those folks usually...
I thought that was a Jesus thing. I thought they were trying to buy birthday presents for Jesus' birthday bash.
It's first of all, it is the birthday of Santa Claus. I'm fairly certain of that.
Okay.
So anyway, so many people end up being just in terrible debt because, so this is one thing that I've learned. Christmas is a financial emergency every year. And it's because it is not on the same day every year. And that throws people off. So there is no way to plan for it. I've been reading up on several financial books and rereading older ones, and all of them say the same thing. There is just no way to plan for something like Christmas. So, just get ready for a financial catastrophe every January when the credit card bill shows up.
Yeah, that's if you walk into Walmart. The other day I was in Walmart and there was, I can't remember what the ripoff was. Maybe it was one of these like H&R Block or one of these tax things saying, come here and do your, we'll front your cash for your, And then I went to the checkout and they had that you could pay for it in installment plan, some sort of a finance option so that you can, but of course you would be a complete dirtbag of a dad if you didn't go ahead and spend, $6 or $8 grand buying your kids the new Xbox or whatever it is that the neighbor kids are getting. So obviously if you can't afford it, you just run it on credit. That's the thing to do. Yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about was, I guess, what bad financial habits have you seen growing up and in your life as a Christian that you would want to teach your kids to avoid? And what would you want to teach them to do differently than most of Christianity does when dealing with our finances in our home as an individual, maybe before you get married, and even in a church for that matter?
Well, I've had a love-hate relationship with money. Sometimes I've thought that if you would watch the way I am with money, you would just think that I hate it. Because I've found ways to dispose of it properly. but
You get rid
I
of
would
money and eat it up so badly, you would think you caught it sleeping with your wife.
exactly.
Go
So
ahead. I got in
I,
my computer. Continue.
yeah, I was just if there was one thing that I would say that it would be helpful to teach your children, or that children should be taught in school, it would be better money management. It's something that I wish that I would have learned a little bit sooner. I've always had a lot of fun earning money, and just as much fun spending it. And so if you can't balance that out to where you earn it faster than you spend it, that was always for a lot of years, my thought with money problems was, well, I just need to earn more because I'm spending so much. And so learning how to budget and take care of it is stewardship. Once you
for morons, who needs to learn that? Just earn more faster. So long as you live the axiom of the poor, which is spend it all, it doesn't matter how fast you earn it.
Exactly. Well,
I was just
one of the proverbs of wisdom that always stuck with me in my early spending years was hurry up and spend it quick before you run out.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of my life motto. Just hurry up and spend it quick before you run out. No, I mean, it wasn't intentional, but obviously the more desperate of a situation you get in, the harder it is to manage money properly. What were you going to say? I interrupted you.
Oh, I was going to tell you just about a fella that I was listening to recently who now I can't remember. I was watching a video of this guy. I've been, really into the subject the last couple of months, getting ready for this financial class that we're doing. And this one gentleman he was an actor and he was a producer and he did a lot of stuff in Hollywood. And he talked about how, he made millions and millions of dollars every year and he spent millions and millions of dollars every year. And he never realized that that was a problem until the day that he stopped working, when he was getting old and he wanted to retire and work was kind of drying up and he didn't want to do it anymore. And he turned around and he basically had nothing left. Like there were no assets in his life whatsoever to deal with. And this guy had made the amount of money that all of us would like to make. I mean, I would imagine if you could take a quick straw poll of everyone you knew and you said, hey, how much money would you like to make if you got to make up a number? I imagine people would say, oh, I don't know, several $7 million a year. That sounds great.
Right.
But it doesn't help because people's problem is not making money, especially in America. In America today, anyone can go out and make money. That's really not anyone's problem. Everybody's problem is once you get the money, you don't have a plan for it. So you revert to the axiom of the poor, which is spend it all. Now, some rich people live by that same axiom. They spend it all as well. And they all run into the same problem, which is the minute they stop working, they don't have anything. And so did you ever hear about Michael Jackson or, who was the other gentleman that, the one that played the piano, the queer fella, not Liberace, the other one, Elton John.
Yeah, Elton John.
So Elton John filed for bankruptcy. Elton John was one of the richest musicians making tens of millions of dollars a year. I mean, and I don't remember the numbers because, again, I didn't just look this up. This is something I read about a while ago.
Wasn't he blind?
No, that was Ray Charles. Also black.
Ray Charles was blind.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know how. And Stevie Wonder. Elton John.
For some reason, I was thinking Elton John was not blind, though.
White piano.
Yeah. For some reason, I thought he was blind. I don't know why I'm thinking that.
No, he wasn't blind. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
I thought maybe he couldn't tell what he was signing.
Yeah, that could have explained why he lost all his money if he couldn't find it. I mean, that makes sense. I appreciate that. That's a very helpful add-in to the story.
Yeah.
So anyway, the point is Elton John making tens of millions of dollars a year went bankrupt because he was spending, $10 million a year more than he was bringing in. So it doesn't matter the amount of money you bring in. It matters what you do with it. So you said something about growing up and the way you were raised. So let me ask you, as a homeschool kid, how much were you taught about money? What were the lessons that were passed on to Caleb Jenks as a child?
So there was never an official course on the subject. There is a lot. Looking back, I see a lot that was caught more than taught, I suppose. So my parents were very frugal. My mom, they would have technically be considered a single income home. My dad worked. My mom did a lot more stuff to save money than to make money. She did teach some classes and do some things that earned money as well. But she did a lot around the house to cook, and we never ate out or, made a lot of the clothes, that type of thing. And the biggest thing that I learned coming out of that, and that I've seen a lot of my Christian friends stumble into, is many of us do live in single income homes. But for me and a lot of my friends that would have come out of kind of that generation where our parents were frugal, we didn't want to be stingy with stuff and be, I don't know. I guess
your kids
for me,
have to live like you did.
Yeah, for me, I wanted to make sure that, my kids had a, comfortable life. And so as a single income home, now we were trying to live like all of our dual income friends were, where I was out working a job. My wife was, a homemaker, and we were trying to spend money on the same things that all of our friends were to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak. And it's actually hard to live the same type of lifestyle that all your friends that are in debt do, if you're trying not to be in debt and you're trying to be a single income home. Of course, now my wife is working from home some, which is a big help. But for a lot of years, we were a single income home. And that's one of the things I've talked with several of my friends about, that because it's not uncommon to see that in, more the conservative Christian circles where, if you have several children, your wife stays home. Yes, that saves you quite a bit of money on eating out and that type of thing. But if you make decisions as the dad, like I did, where pretty soon we're out, eating out 2 or 3, 4 times a week as a family, and my wife's not working, it's hard to keep up, a single income home trying to live a dual income lifestyle. So that's one of the big mistakes that I made early on, was not budgeting properly because I just wanted to keep up with what everyone else was doing.
So during those years, how much money were you saving up every month?
Yeah. Well, whenever I got done picking out which bills we were going to pay, then I didn't have much money left to save up.
And that story is very similar to a lot of stories that I've heard. Now, you want to know something interesting, and you can, comment on this if you want. I mean, I'm more than happy to talk about all my financial stupidities and all the financial failures I've had, because that's, where we're going to learn a lot of stuff. So many people will complain about the cost of goods and services. So many people will complain about the amount of money they bring in for their job. So many people will complain about the current financial state that they are in. But very, very, very few people will do anything about it. And by that, I mean, they will read books on the matter and learn about finances. They will learn what successful people do. They will learn how to make more money, manage the money that they do make better. It's amazing to me how many people will, because if you ask anybody, if you could change one thing in your life, what would it be? I would imagine most people are like, yeah, I wish I made more money. But the problem is that the reason they want to make it is they just want to spend it. It's not that they want to manage it any better and be more successful with money. But it just blows me away, the staggeringly low number of people who will educate themselves on it as if money and finances is like, you need to be a wizard. You need a cauldron, and you need to, throw in ingredients and make a potion in order to be successful. Like, it's impossible to learn.
Right.
How could anyone ever get good at that? It's like learning how to be an astronaut. It's impossible. So why even try? So that always blew me away. Let me ask you this. What made a change in your life? What was it that made you decide to do things differently?
Well, when I made the decision that I was going to get out of debt, and got pretty serious about debt, and started putting, anytime that we had any extra money, I started putting that toward the debt. And I started seeing how much more incentive I had to earn money. Like I was finding things to sell just to get rid of, so I had the money to pay down on debt because I was sick of being in debt. That definitely, I think that probably was the tipping point for me with it, was realizing how fast that it can start accumulating, how fast you can feel choked out by it. And just kind of the endless payments. I just felt like I constantly had, payments on this and payments on that. And I just got tired of that. And I knew from in the past that it's a lot more fun to earn money to save it than it is if it's already spent if every dollar you earn has already been spent a year prior, 6 months prior. It takes a lot of the fun out of it. And so once I got to the point where we were debt free, then of course we started, taking that same money that we would have been putting into paying off debt and throwing it into real estate or, whatever we could to invest just as savagely as I had been trying to pay off debt. And I think that was the turning point for me, was just realizing that you don't have to be, most of those weren't even 6-figure years where we had, a real good windfall or anything like that. But if you manage your money properly, you can, if you've got an income, whatever that income is, and you've got a budget, you can manage to save and invest. And pay off your debt. And so that was the tipping point for me. And also it made me pretty serious about not wanting to just jump back into unnecessary debt.
Were there any financial periodicals, podcasts, videos in any individuals, any books that you ever got into that helped point you in the right direction or get you going on any of that?
Yeah. So I did a Dave Ramsey course, and he advised me to get into cryptocurrency. And that's paid off really well for me.
Yeah.
No, I did get some Dave Ramsey books, and I did the.
Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No. I was just going to ask if you seriously did get into Dave Ramsey and his program at some point.
I did. I got his Every Dollar app, which is good for budgeting, and I went through the, I can't remember what the Financial Peace University.
University.
It's called. Yeah. So I did that, and did part of it. I did through our church, and I finished the rest of it out online. Our church had done a session on that, and that was definitely helpful. That was after we had gotten completely out of debt and had invested in real estate. And I actually stopped investing for a while after that, slowed down on the investing because I really wasn't. I was always overly optimistic with our budget and I hadn't really factored in as much as I should have for personal stuff. And I was investing so fast that I was kind of choking us out on our personal budget. And after talking it over with my wife, we decided that, we needed a better grocery budget and whatever than what we had. So I actually slowed down on my investing at that point and realized that I had probably a little heavily invested a little sooner than I should have. We always were still living paycheck to paycheck, even though I was investing. And so we kind of slowed that down to build up a little bit more of a buffer. But that definitely helped. And I think that the way that he kind of put everything into it was the first time that I really looked at it and said, okay, everything that is going on in my life is either it's my responsibility, if it's good or bad, either way. So I can't always think, well, we're in this bad situation because of this circumstance or that circumstance. And it was always the kind of thing where I let circumstances lead up to bad situations financially. And since then, realizing that really taking control of your money before it's spent, that is within your control. No matter how much money you're making, it is in your control how it gets spent. And that was the biggest thing that I took away from that, was learning to budget and take control of my spending. And for me, and still to this day, my biggest weakness still is eating out. If I'm hungry and I want to eat, I'm going to stop and grab something to eat. And I like taking the family out to eat. It's just, I hate to put that on my wife to be like, hey, honey, what's for dinner or whatever. And so instead I'll text and I'll be like, hey, I'll be home in a while. Let's go grab dinner together. Well, once, you're buying dinner for 6 people, it's no longer like you're getting $30 dinners anymore for you and your wife. It adds up faster. So if you do that several times a week, pretty soon, you've got, $800 a week going out for meals, and that adds up quick at the end of a month. And so you have to be careful. And I had, when I had guys working for me doing construction work, I had a bad habit of stopping and buying them all lunch. And it was just once a week thing. And then it turned into an everyday thing. And then it was like breakfast or donuts and whatever on the way to work. And pretty soon I started adding that up in my budgeting for my business, because all of that was tracked. And it was awful how fast that added up. I mean, if you don't keep, it's the little expenses like that really get you. It's not the big ticket purchases that were getting me. It was the meals. So that's still my weak point to this day. But
I have a little bit of an addiction that I think it would be appropriate to out myself on this addiction that costs more money than I'm proud to say, and that is my addiction to Amazon.com. And how easy it is to, solve a problem in my life with 2 clicks of a mouse, or get on my phone and, tap on a few screens, and all of a sudden it's like, there we go, done. This, stupid little annoying whatever that I'm sick of dealing with, not going to have to deal with it anymore. It is so easy to get on there. And if you don't have a budget and you're not watching what you're doing, it's always like, this thing's $20 and it's going to save me, 5 minutes, 10 minutes a week. Why wouldn't I, want one of these? And I can do it for work. I can do it for hunting. I can do it for home. I can do it for church. It's so easy. I can buy something that'll help me with all these different areas of my life. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with eating out. There's nothing wrong with getting the guys coffee and donuts at work. There's nothing wrong with buying something stupid, on Amazon.com to help you solve a problem. There is something wrong with doing those things when you can't afford it, or not keeping track of the amount of money that you're spending. And that's all it comes down to. And, you've brought up the term budget several times, and it's a word that so many Christians consider like a 4-letter curse word in their house, and they don't want the name to be spoken of like it's Voldemort or something. And the fact is, if you just get on a budget and set that line item on there, it's fine. If you want to bring coffee and donuts to the guys at work once every week, no big deal. You just have to decide that the dollars you're doing that with are going to come from somewhere else. And so long as you map it out and you're okay with it, great, then go ahead and do that. I know people, Caleb, in their budget, they literally have a $500 line item every week in cash to give away. That's what they do. Now, they're doing well, and they've lived tight with a good budget for a long time, and they've invested really well. And now they're at a point in their life where they have so many millions of dollars. They're like, we can't even spend it all. Like our lifestyle is not such where we could ever spend this money. So this fella and his wife both have line items in their budget like that. And if they, the guy that was explaining this, he said, if I see a woman pumping gas with a bunch of kids in the car, and I have the opportunity to chat with her for a second, he's like, if I find out she's a single mom, I give her $100, $200. He's like, he does stuff like that constantly. Same with, if there's a waitress, same thing. Anytime he finds a single mom, here you go. God bless you. Good luck. And they just give it out.
His friend lives there in Grand Junction?
No.
Oh, okay. I was just thinking we should find out what kind of vehicle he drives, so all of our single mother listeners could.
Yeah, if he was living in Grand Junction, I'd already be trying to get this guy over to my church. Lord knows that would help some. But again, it was just there are lots of people who do really good things with their money, but they usually are only able to do that after they've been smart for a really long time. For the rest of us, we are working on getting there. So anyway,
do you know of anyone that does well with money that didn't at some point have a money problem? I've talked to quite a few of my friends that are doing well financially, and most of them at some point in their life were clearly in pretty dire straits financially, where they had made some stupid decisions, things didn't go right for them, that type of thing. I'm just wondering if it's possible. I hope for my children that it's possible for them to learn how to manage money well enough that they don't have to learn it the hard way. I know I'm stupid enough that the best way for me to learn is to hit me where it hurts. And so losing money personally is a very memorable tool.
So to answer your question, I would say no. But with that being said, Joanna and I have really been trying to teach our kids to do it right so that they don't have to go down the same road. And, and I am very proud of my oldest two kids. Both of them, 16 and 15 years old, have a, maxed out Roth IRA where they are contributing every month enough to where that thing is maxed out, and they're literally doing that at 16 and 15 years old. They both got good jobs. They have, real jobs where they're making real money, and they are moving the needle on their financial future, and they're doing it now. So if they're able to do that, if they're able to live by a budget, I know my 16-year-old is, he has, and obviously their bills are less, but it doesn't change the fact that every dollar that comes in, he gives 10% to God. He saves this much, he invests this much, and he has this much that he spends on his bills, which are auto insurance, gas, a variety of things like that. And then he has this much money that he can blow on stupid nonsense. And let me tell you, Caleb, he blows it on stupid nonsense, but that's fine. That's what it's for. And he's a 16-year-old. So I really don't care. He'll take all of his brothers and his sister out and get them all a slushie, for no reason. Okay, well, that's fine. You can do whatever you want with your money, but they've been doing pretty good. For me, I've definitely, so I was not taught how to handle money at all, which is a shame because my dad was a smart guy. He had a good job. He made good money. He invested his money his whole life, and when he got to a point where he wanted to retire, he stopped working. And I was talking with my kids about it. And I was like, hey, you ever remember Grandpa going to work? And they're like, no. I said, yeah, because he retired. He never had to go to work. And my dad was the kind of guy, when I got married, we bought a house like 2 months after I got married, and it was a 100-year-old house. It was nothing new, nothing fancy, but it was something we could afford. And we were really proud of this house, and we were thrilled that we could get into a house that we could afford, had a payment that we could afford. And my mom and dad, the first time they came out to visit us, my dad comes in, walks into the kitchen, looks around the kitchen, and he looks at me, says, "Where's the dishwasher?" I said, "What?" He said, "Where's the dishwasher?" I said, "It doesn't have a dishwasher. It's an old house." The kitchen was remodeled in the 60s. It had metal cabinets in it. Okay. It was, it was not a new, kitchen. And he's like, "This is ridiculous. Your poor wife is pregnant and you're going to make her wash dishes. Get in the truck." And that was it. We drove to whatever, Sears or Home Depot, and my dad bought a dishwasher and made me bring it home and install it that day. And that was the kind of guy that he was. And he was able to do stuff like that because he lived on a budget. He was smart with his money. He invested his money wisely. And when he wanted to retire, him and my mom didn't have to do anything. They retired and that's it. And he passed away several years ago, and my mom still doesn't have to work, So it's a shame, but like so many people, he didn't pass that knowledge and wisdom on to his kids. And you got to remember, I didn't grow up in a Christian home, but Caleb, how many Christian people that handle their money well are not teaching their kids, the next generation, to do it? It's unbelievable to me. And it's not going to happen on accident. You have to put effort into it, but it's our job as parents to set our kids up so that they can be successful. So for us, we got our kids the Dave Ramsey homeschool curriculum, and we're making them all go through that. And it's been tremendously beneficial. And then we talk about money a lot. You know, we
got them all doing. Did Dave get all your kids doing Bitcoin yet, or they didn't read that part of the course yet?
I didn't get to that chapter. Okay, so the reason Caleb is joking about Bitcoin because Caleb and I have been fans of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency for many, many years. Dave Ramsey is not a fan of Bitcoin, like at all. So we joke about it because Bitcoin, for us and for anyone that's gotten into it many years ago, has done really, really, really well. And we're constantly, like running that joke because there's going to be a day when someone's finally going to sit down with him and be like, Dave, let me explain to you what this is and how it works and, and the benefits of it. But Dave Ramsey's level of risk is like down here. And then our level of risk is like, up here. And every financial, what do you want to call them? Expert, guru, whatever. They all have a different level of financial risk. So have you ever read any of Robert Kiyosaki's stuff? Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that fella?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I've listened to the Rich Dad, Poor Dad audiobook.
Sure.
I've not actually
read it. So you know that his level of risk is way higher than Dave Ramsey's.
Right.
But you also got to remember, he is teaching a different group of people than Dave Ramsey is. And Caleb, let me ask you this. How long, you and I talk about this a bunch, but we're both pretty sure that I met you when you were like 16 or 17 years old, right? Maybe 18, right. Something in there. Okay. It was before. Okay. So when I met you, you were already self-employed. You already opened up your own music store. You were giving lessons for like 30, 40 hours a week. You were selling instruments. You were already an entrepreneur, so to speak, right?
Right.
How many people do you know that should be self-employed and who would do well at it versus the number of people who are self-employed who do well at it? And all I'm saying is
big difference.
Now, I'm sure you and I both think there are several people that would do great at it, but the reason they're not even going to try is because their risk tolerance is way down here. They're so scared to lose $1 that they're not willing to try to make 10,000. And that stops a lot of people from ever becoming self-employed. Robert Kiyosaki's books, which I have several of. I've read them. I love them. I tell other people that they should read them. But his books are for the person who is willing to be self-employed, the person who is willing to put their money up at greater risk, and the person who has that hunger and desire for a massive ROI, return on investment. Right. So Dave Ramsey, who's his book for? His book is for Johnny Punch Clock, right? Joe Sixpack. Okay. The average person in America who's having financial problems, which is most people, and they need some guidance as to, look, this is how you can, do better in your life by these baby steps. So I see that they both have a place. Dave Ramsey has been tremendously helpful in my life and your life and in the lives of lots of people we know. But at the same time, Dave Ramsey is never going to advise people to do half of the things that you and I have done with our money that's made us money, because it is totally outside the level of risk that he sees as reasonable. What are your thoughts?
Right. Yeah. And I think there's something to be said for having kind of a mixed bag on your risk level as far as your long-term plan. I think it's good to have some, I think we've talked about this before, some lower risk investments But you obviously, if you look over people that have ever made it, they weren't the ones that played it on the safe side.
No.
Elon Musk, for instance, he's gambled with his companies to the point, the brink of bankruptcy over and over again, and it's paid off. And he took the risk and it worked out, and he's now the richest man in the world. So obviously, some people are just better at taking risk and are willing to do that. I was on the phone with my mom the other night trying to explain to her that I'm actually very conservative, that I consider myself to be very conservative as far as taking risk. Because she was just double checking my plans for our trip to Europe and wanted to make sure that I thought things through or whatever. And I told her, don't worry about me. You know me. I'm not a risk taker. I'm pretty conservative, and I consider myself to be very measured and very conservative with the risk that I actually take compared to the risk that I would be willing to take. I usually dial it back quite a bit. So, well, the reason I'd asked the question earlier about if you know anyone who does well with money that it didn't at some point struggle is because I hear some of my friends say things like, yeah, I'm just terrible with money. And it's almost like it used to bug me when I was teaching music to hear somebody say, oh yeah, I'll never be able to play music. I'm tone deaf. I can't play, I'm terrible with music or whatever. It's like, no, you never gave it a fair shot. And I think that the thing that's been encouraging to me to see some of my friends that I've heard their stories of how bad they've struggled in the past and how well they're doing now, it's given me incentive to say, okay, just because I've been bad with money in the past doesn't mean that I, have to be bad forever, especially if you're somebody that's driven by, if you enjoy earning money, you enjoy saving money, you enjoy making money. I don't see why not to make that your expertise, or why not to go ahead and put in the effort to make it to where you're not somebody that looks back and says, oh, I'm terrible with money. I don't consider myself now to be a financial guru, but I also don't consider that I'm bad with money anymore, because I've learned how to decide where I'm going to spend it, how much I'm going to spend, budget it, and be in control of it. It's made a big difference where, even if I only make $100,000 in a year, which it used to be a lot of money, isn't anymore. With $100,000, if you don't spend more than 50 of it, all of a sudden now you got $50,000 to invest or deal with. And it makes a big difference, as opposed to if you say, okay, well, I'm making $100,000, but we're spending $100,000. I just need to figure out how to make 120. No, you just need to figure out how to not spend the 100 that you're making, and learn how to deal with it properly. And that's I think has made the biggest difference for us. And it also seems to me that the less broke you are, the easier it is to be picky and say no to work that doesn't pay, and to only take work that is going to be beneficial to you and your family. And you'll find yourself working less and making more if you're not just broke, living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah. So to go back to your point, my short answer is going to be definitely not. Most people that do really well with money have gone through some type of a hard, situation where they came to a point and said, you know what, I'm tired of this. I want to correct this. And here we go. How do we do this? And then they would get into it. And really, you find the same thing, I think, with a lot of people with their health, with their physical fitness, with a lot of areas of their life where they kind of hit a, rock bottom, so to speak. And then they're like, nope, changing this. Here we go. So most people, no, how about this? I think the question maybe isn't all that great, because it seems like almost everybody I know starts out doing pretty poorly with money. I think that's really what it comes down to, is that just almost everybody starts out in this place of ignorance with no education, and they just revert to the axiom of the poor: spend it all. And they do that for so many years, and then a financial reversal comes, an emergency shows up, and they're like, what do I do? I don't have 2 nickels to rub together, and it kind of puts them in a panic. And then they say, okay, man, I really got to learn, what to do here. So yeah, I definitely don't doubt that. Now let me ask you this: you've remained self-employed pretty much your whole life, or for the majority of your life. You haven't really worked for many people. And I know it's funny because you're currently working a pretty steady job right now. What would you call it? Part-time?
Yeah, so I've only ever had one employer. The only time that I wasn't working as an employee, or that the only time that I wasn't working as a independent contractor, either working for
Mhm.
myself or as a subcontractor on some construction project or something, was for a local trust business that I worked for when we first moved here from Colorado. I went in and I just needed something to do. I didn't have work lined up here, and I got a job working as an employee at a truss plant. And now I've done it off and on. Well, I think I wasn't in there for probably about 5 or 6 years that I wasn't in there at all. But from time to time, I've worked in there at nights, and so it is piecework. I'm actually not on as an independent contractor. I'm on as an employee, but it is. There's a lot of the same kind of self-employed freedom there with it, where I can go in at night and work. So that's been a blessing. And I've done numerous other things, but
So why have you? I know the answer to this question in my life. Why have you found yourself being on the side of self-employed, owning your own job, or owning your own business?
well, once you've done it, I won't say that. So it's definitely got its pros and its cons, but once you've done it and you've had a number of years of experience where you're building your own dream, it's very hard to be content trying to build somebody else's dream. And that's the way I consider it working for an employer. You're building their dream, and there's not a lot of, I mean, there may be some upward mobility, but there's not really a huge amount of future there. And when I'm working a job, I like to be able to be innovative and come up with solutions, find better ways to do things, more efficiency. And it just takes the fun out of it when that's going into somebody else's business rather than your own. That being said, I did come to a point where I realized that if you're broke, in debt, and trying to run your own business, it may not always be a good mix until you're able to manage your own money, your own finances. Being self-employed may not be the best mix for some people, and I found that it wasn't working well for me. The stress coming from it, if I had clients that weren't able to pay, and I needed that money now, it was just, I couldn't deal with that stress. So I started driving for Uber, which was kind of the next best thing. I was still self-employed, but I was never coming away from a week with a red week where I lost $1,500 at the end of the week, and I still had to buy food to put on the table. At least, there was bad weeks and good weeks where I made better or worse, but at least I still had something left to show for it at the end of every week. Whereas when I was in the construction business, there was times where the lowest paid guys that were working for me still made more money than I did. The $10 an hour guys were the only guys that walked away with money at the end of the week. And I had a deficit because things weren't going well in the job. And so that's the brutal thing of it is if you're not good with money, being self-employed, it can actually make the problem worse if you're not careful. If you're already not managing your personal finances properly, then managing business finances may not work well either. But I found it to be a lot more enjoyable the more that we've gotten to the point where if I am starting a new business venture, that I don't need the money off of that business for the first year. I can kind of let it grow and build, and then we can start to take some money off of it. But to where our personal finances aren't draining the business, that has certainly helped.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you what, for me, it was as simple as I knew the amount of money I was making my employer, and I knew the amount of money that he was paying me because I worked for a service company, and I would install a furnace or a boiler. I'd install a hot water heater, and I would go pick the thing up from the supply house and see the number. And I would go and I would install it, and I'd see the parts and the materials I'd take off of the truck. And I knew at the end of the day what he paid me. And I thought the difference between these two numbers is staggering. Like there are several decimal places, we can add several zeros to what Patrick makes in a day, and we're still not hitting the amount that my employer would make in a day. And I was thinking to myself, okay, if he can do it, I can do it because I'm literally doing it. So, for me, I just had to learn how to manage money, manage a business, manage risk, some people skills. And that was it. And I was off to the races. And what I found was if you are able to provide services that people want, or if you have goods to sell people that they want, people are more than happy to trade money for it all day long. You just have to build up the clientele. So obviously this is going to, every industry is very different. Okay. And I don't consider myself to be an expert in other than a few industries. I would never start a restaurant. I don't know anything about restaurants and running a restaurant. I've washed dishes, I've waited tables, I've cooked in a restaurant, but I am not ready to run a restaurant. I have zero experience doing it. And it's a very tough industry. Now, as far as a construction company, sure, I've run construction companies. I've been hired to run other people's construction companies. I've started my own construction companies. So I have lots and lots and lots of years of experience, and I have no problem with this. But that's all I did was I saw the difference in pay, and I'm like, what am I am wasting time. I realized that if I could just do what my employer did, and I could do it like twice a month, that's all I have to do. I can work 2 days a month and make more money than I'm working now, working roughly like 2 work days a month. So for me, it was like, you know what? It's worth a shot. And then I found out that it really wasn't all that hard to, be self-employed and be good at what I do. But I think that also has something to do with the industry. Like if your industry is retail, if your industry is food services, if your industry is hospitality, well, I don't know if you can just start your own hotel or build your own restaurant, or, that might be a lot tougher to start your own car dealership. I don't know. I've never done any of those things. But for me, in the service industry, it really wasn't that hard. You know what? I had one fella tell me, he said that he was in moving. Okay. And this is, I'm at a conference, and this is a guy that's made, millions and millions and millions of dollars. And this guy is the guy that everyone is, he's one of several guys that we've all paid to come and listen to, okay, to help us. And he explained, he's like, look, in the moving industry, you buy a truck and you hire 2 guys and you put out a sign. And then people start calling and you start filling up the truck and driving it across town. He said, and then when you get big enough, you buy a second truck, you fill it with 2 more guys. And he made a lot of money in this moving company. Then he got into software. And he said, software is different. It's kind of like you start a moving company, but you start out by buying 25,000 trucks and you fill them all with guys and you put out a bunch of signs and you really hope that it works out in the end. And it was just 2 very different business models, because one had so much of an upfront cost in software development, but then when you brought it to market, it was totally worth it. It's kind of like the pharmaceutical industry. If you think about it, this wonder drug that fixes whatever, it costs the company, they can make 10,000 of these pills for 3 cents. Okay. Right. But that's not the expense. The expense is the first pill. How much did it cost to get the first pill? And it's like, well, that one cost $40 million in research and scientists and lab equipment. So, there are very different business models depending on the industry that you're in. And I understand that. I'm just saying that it was money that motivated me to be self-employed, and I could never, ever, ever go back. I mean, the only way I could honestly see working for someone else is if I am financially independent, I'm independently wealthy, I'm retired, and it's like, you know what, I'm bored. I just need something to do, a couple days a week just to stay busy, get out of the house. So I'm going to take a part-time job. I don't know. It's someplace where they ask me to, smoke cigars and drink coffee all day. So, right. or shoot guns and drive fast cars. So if I can find that job, I'd be willing to work for someone else.
Oh man. Well, and that is part of why I've enjoyed being self-employed, is I have been fortunate to usually find things that I enjoy doing. And if you can find something you enjoy doing, then you really don't feel like you're at work. I haven't been able to shoot guns and drive fast cars for a living. I got close driving Uber. I just had to drive my car fast, but it wasn't a fast car. But yeah, that is part of it too, is just learning to enjoy what you do. I think it makes earning money not a chore anymore. If you enjoy what you're doing, then and really enjoying the people that you work with and work for. If you can get to that point where it's not everything's a fight, then it makes it a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah. Yeah. I found that mostly it's been fear that's kept people out of being self-employed and making a lot of money. The other thing that I've learned is that there are lots of people who possess the skills, and they are far more skilled than I am in an industry, even in construction. But their people skills are so terrible and their organization skills are so terrible that they would never make it working for themselves. And these people are not willing to read a book or take a class in order to develop and hone the couple of skills that they're lacking so that they could be successful. And it's a shame because a lot of people are really, I don't want to say they're condemning themselves to poverty, because that's not what they're doing. But their potential, their financial potential is just handicapped because they're not willing to step out of the box, step out of their own comfort zone, and learn one or two skills that they clearly lack in order to improve and get better. Now, is your brother self-employed?
Currently, we're both working nights together, so somewhat self-employed.
Okay. And then what about all your sisters?
We're both employees of the trust business that we work, but we're kind of freelance or piecework. As far as my sisters, I'm trying to think. I got a couple of sisters that would be in the medical profession. Aside from that, everyone else would be self-employed, I guess, or stay at home, whatever.
Because your dad was self-employed. You grew up in a home where your dad had his own business. He had his own shop at the house, and that's where you learned to work.
Yeah. So my dad does Auto Buddy and paint work. And I did quite a bit of that growing up. And then I kind of tried, I started off doing some airplane painting stuff and tried to do some cars and stuff in between. And I quickly learned, I knew this before I got into it, just because I could do it. It wasn't something I enjoyed doing. And it's hard to try to fight your way into something that you really hate doing and make a living of it. The biggest thing for me was I didn't like being around the paint fumes and stuff all the time. It just got on my nerves, and I'd done it for enough years that I didn't want to do it. So I tried to build a business doing it. And I would say find something that you actually enjoy doing and you'll like doing, and you'll be a lot better off. Yeah.
And I knew you back then. How did that end up going?
I moved to Texas and shut down my business there. The airplanes they paid well. I tried to do cars in between, and that didn't pay well enough to pay the bills because the overhead was pretty high at the airport there. I'd rented a hangar, and word of mouth ended up with a few airplane paint jobs that I did there. And that was fun. I enjoyed the airplane side of it because I was intrigued by airplanes. That was fun. But the painting thing still sucked, dealing with the paint fumes and coming home with headaches and stuff. So I'm glad I got out of that. And yeah, I would say definitely don't be afraid to switch up industries once you are self-employed either. Don't if it's not, one isn't panning out, don't be afraid to try something new. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, there's always going to be money to be made. I mean, all the time. Drive down every road in America. There's a business somewhere there, and someone is trading money for services and services rendered and whatever you're selling. Okay, Caleb, top 3 financial mistakes that you would tell people not to make. What have you learned from your failures? It doesn't have to be in order.
Yeah. So the biggest one was not budgeting. Figuring out where your money went after the fact is basically pointless unless you're trying to learn from your mistakes. So if your money's already gone and you can't figure out where it went, and then you log into your online banking and start trying to figure something out, that's a mistake you should never repeat. If you ever find yourself making that mistake, don't repeat it, because repeating it month after month after month is an awful place to be. I've certainly done that. I would say, so I was never really one for a lot of, and fortunately my wife isn't either. We were never ones really for a lot of lavish, unnecessary spending, where we were, she never was carrying designer purses and that type of thing. I was blessed with a wife that wasn't crazy like that. But talking about things together with if you're married and you can't come up with a budget together, that's a recipe for disaster. So being able to start talking things over as far as finances go as a couple as early on as you possibly can. The earlier, the better, maybe even before you're married, come up with a financial plan and stick to it. That is, I would say for me, probably was early on the biggest mistake that I made is my wife and I, when we got married, I had never really had money issues before then because I didn't have much for bills. I always had a stack of cash and things were going okay. And after I got married, I went on an expensive honeymoon, blew all my money, had some credit card debt to pay off, and then one mistake after another trying to start a business. And my wife wasn't brought into a lot of those decisions. And so I made decisions that affected both of us, but I made those decisions solely. And my wife she wasn't the one that had to deal with taking care of paying those bills off, but it does affect you both as a couple when you're pinching pennies. So talking things over with your wife, and then also for those that maybe would have a wife that has a money problem, it's going to be helpful if you get ahead of the game with that as well, where you get the budget down and you guys are on the same page before you find out that every dollar you make is spent before you get to see it because your wife is spending it. So there's that aspect of it as well. And I would say that for me, I would say that for me, that probably the hardest thing that we have been through in our marriage has been financial stress. It didn't ever get to the point where it was make it or break it on our marriage, but I do know people who have had divorces over financial stress. And I would say that some of the biggest mistakes that I've made in our marriage would have been financial mistakes. So talking that over with your wife, I think that's two. I'm trying to think if there's another one. I guess that's still kind of related to the budget issue, but talking your budget over with your wife. I guess the last thing that I would say for me would be vehicles. If there was some place that's a weakness that for me and a lot of guys around my age, it's going to be trying to drive a car that's, you got a payment on your car. We never had a car payment until our current car. We actually do have a car payment currently. It's the first time I ever bought. No, I'm completely off of the Dave Ramsey program right now.
Good to hear.
Yeah, I've been there, done that. So no, we always drove cars that were, $3,000, $5,000 cars that I'd buy wrecked at an auction and fix them up or whatever. And finally, after dealing with broken down cars for so many years and being that I was kind of using it for my business, driving Uber with it, I finally went and bought a nice vehicle with a payment. And then I quit driving for Uber. So now I'm stuck with the car payment. But that has been something that I've really been surprised at. The nicer a car you have, a $50,000 car doesn't drive down the road any better than a $3,000 car does. If a car is up and running and it gets you from A to B, don't feel obligated to show up, to your parties and events in a fancy car. If somebody else has a nicer car, that's okay. So being without a car payment is a huge blessing. We're actually getting ready to sell our car before we go to Europe. We looked into shipping it over there, and it's pretty expensive to ship one over there for 6 months. So we decided just to sell it here and rent over there. But yeah, that would be probably the biggest thing for me is I enjoy buying cars, and I bought a couple of unnecessary cars where it was a sports car or something fun, a pickup that I wanted to have, and spent money on vehicles that doesn't hold up as good as guns do. If you're a guy and you want to go spend money on something, spend it on guns. The resale value is better on guns than vehicles. So,
all right, I think that's really good. I can I'll answer the same question for myself, and then we'll be at an hour. The first thing I thought of as far as biggest mistake, and I'm going to use different ones, and I'll say that everything before the automobiles I can relate to. For me, I got on the Dave Ramsey plan early on. So for us, we've always saved up a lot of money and threw a lot of cash on any vehicle. So if we had to have a car payment, it was always for less than a year. We always got ours paid off in under 12 months from whenever we borrowed money to buy a car. The last vehicle that I bought for cash, so we have no car payment. We haven't had one in so many years. It's crazy. And the amount that people spend on car payments, the average car payment in America is over $500. It's 700 and something for newer vehicles, and it's like, I don't know, 500 and something for used vehicles. So the average is just over $600 for a car payment. And if you think about a married couple that has two of those, holy cow, how on earth can your budget work if you have more money going to your car payments than your mortgage? Of course, they probably also have like a, $2,500, $3,000 mortgage payment. But one of my biggest mistakes was trying to get rich quick. And what I found was that if I just stuck with the plan that I was on, I would do fine. And trying to get rich quickly is where I went back on any principled decisions that I had, as far as these are the rules. This is, I'm going to go down this road. I got to stay within the lines. When I would drift off the road, that's when I would have the problems. And one of the ways was trying to make money too quickly and by getting into riskier and riskier endeavors. And again, risk is a spectrum. So please understand that some people, their risk level is like a CD at a bank, and that's it. Like, that's the riskiest thing they're going to do. For me, my risk level was much higher, but I still had a line. And when I would cross over that line and move into other areas, that's when I would, find myself having problems. On top of that, I would say anytime I got away from a budget, every time I would move away from that because of whatever, it's easy just to get lazy. It's easy to have a catastrophe come up and things get shaken up. And all of a sudden, you decide to, set the budget aside for temporarily, to fix this. And then not getting back on it, it's very easy to slip into that dangerous area of just spend everything. And then I would say, let's see, if I had to do another one, I would say starting and pastoring a church. Worst financial decision of my life. That one is definitely going to handicap you, because it's going to eat up so much of your time that you're not going to have enough time to actually work and make enough money to pay your bills. So that one can be tough. So I would recommend people find a different hobby that's cheaper, something like hunting safari in Africa, or I don't know. So, but no, those were really it. And then if I could go back and change anything, the one thing that I would have done was I would have started investing for my retirement, my future financial freedom. I would have started that earlier. And that's one thing that I can't fix. So the only thing I can do is, move forward from today and just be smart with the money that I have. But when you start looking at the way it works, I always explain it as you have a triangle. And on the 3 points, number one, you have time. So the amount of time between when you start investing and when you want to stop working and living off of your investments. Okay, that amount of time, whether it's a week or whether it's 40 years, it's up to you. But that is one of the numbers in the equation. The second amount is the amount of money you put into investing. And then the third figure is going to be the rate of return that you're dealing with. Obviously, if you start very late, you need to put in a lot more money and or have a much better rate of return. But if you start way earlier, when you're very young, you can put in a small amount of money, you can have a reasonable rate of return, and you can still retire with millions of dollars in the bank. So that's the one thing that I try to tell everybody. And so far I've been successful with teaching 2 of my kids that, where they've started investing for their retirement. Their Roth IRA, they're not going to be able to touch it till they're 59 and a half years old. But that's the one that grows tax-free. And that's why I was explaining to them, I said, look, this is the important one to get going, because the amount of growth that you're going to see and be able to keep from your Roth IRA is going to be substantial. So you want to get into this. once you start making a little more money in a couple of years, when you get, you know, a little bit more of a grown up full-time job that pays a little better, then you should start putting more money into your investments. And you want to do it in things that don't have that hard deadline of when you can start taking money out, so that, let's say you do really well and you're really smart and you're able to retire at the age of 40. Okay, great. You have money that you can live on until, you know, your Roth IRA matures. But the point is, start young. Start on a budget young. Start saving money young. Start investing money young. Start buying real estate young. Start doing all of these things young. And then by the time you turn 45 or 50 years old, like, you're not even going to have to worry about it, you know, because you're going to be like 3/4 of the way or all the way there, and you're going to be ready to stop working, you know, which obviously, you know, would be a big deal. So, right, Caleb, go ahead. Jump in, buddy.
Just one fun thing with that, if you are self-employed and you have children and you're trying to set them up to save, the IRS, if you pay your children, you can pay each child $12,500, I believe it is, per year. And that money is tax-free. And then your child can, so you get to deduct that off your taxes, and your child doesn't have to pay taxes on it. So that's something we started with all of our children. I mean, sometimes it's kind of redundant or somewhat unnecessary tasks around the house, but we give them opportunities to make more money that we write off. And then, of course, they all buy the family dinner on occasion, or, you know, there's some of the expenses, money that when you go to the store that they would have normally been spending on you, or you would have been spending on them. Now they get to spend that out of their earnings. So it teaches them a little bit more about spending, and it's money that was going to get spent anyways. So if we go out to dinner, you know, the kids are buying their own meal. Every once in a while they're buying mine, because that's the polite thing to do. So, but of course we pay them well, you know, substantially more than the hourly rate they would make elsewhere. And it also helps out as far as my opinion of the Federal Reserve and the IRS, and my moral obligation to stoking that little fire over there. Whatever doesn't pass through their hands doesn't hurt them, I figure. So if it's a legal way to help your kids learn to save some money, and you save some money while you're at it, it's worth it. So
yeah.
Our kids we used it's called Lending Club. It's a peer-to-peer lending platform where our kids have each put in money, where other people borrow their money to pay off their credit cards or their you know, whatever it is, home improvement loans. And then each investor does these micro loans where I set the limit on each of the girls' accounts, where they don't put in more than $30 into any particular loan. So if somebody defaults on their loan, the most they're going to lose on it is $30. But then it's pretty high rate of return. And they each started off with a $2,000 account in there. And I think they've each made about $500 over the last few years in interest on that. So there's fun ways like that where they can kind of see their money helping somebody else, and it can grow. The Roth IRA obviously is a really good way to do it too if you're trying to avoid taxes. I have not set those up for the kids, but we should.
Yeah, and you can start the kids don't have to be 18 years old to start those. You can start those things, you know, at any age, so long. And what you do is the account's going to be a custodial account. So your name is going to be on it until they turn 18, and then the account is turned over to them and it's theirs. But you can start it when they're young, and, you know, the sooner you can, the better they're going to do. You know, I wish I had the amount of money to where I could start a trust fund for each of my kids, and when they were born, you know, put some amount of money in there and just invest it and let it grow until they're whatever age. Just because getting them started 18 years earlier when they're first born, you know, those years of growth, you have no idea what compound interest does. Albert Einstein was quoted as saying that compound interest is the most powerful force on earth. And he's right, but it comes down to time, you know. And if you could, I
thought he said it was the eighth wonder of the world, maybe.
Yeah, he might have said both or neither. I don't know, but I've read them both in a book somewhere, and they were attributed to him. No, it doesn't matter. The fact that Albert Einstein or, you know, the drunk Bob down at the bar said it, it's still true. So that's the point of the statement. is that
Well, I like the way that you're doing it a lot better in that we've talked about it some, and we have some money that we save for the kids for education or college or whatever it might go toward eventually. But rather than putting, as far as the money that they're saving, we try to make sure that they earn 100% of that, because I'd hate for them to feel like that it was handed to them on a golden platter, or that they were a trust fund baby. So I'd rather put that money aside into an account, let it grow, and eventually we could always contribute to something if we chose to. But having them be able to start, even if it's at 6, 7, 8 years old, when they're old enough to start washing dishes or whatever it is. Of course, we won't pay them to clean their rooms or do certain things around the house that are kind of their responsibilities. But there's some things that if they help out with, that we'll pay them for. And I think that's a lot more rewarding for them to feel that, yeah, maybe it came from dad and mom, but I earned it, where they can, where their financial future is kind of in their hands. The same thing you're doing with your kids, where they're able to start saving it up. And all of our kids have a little bit of cryptocurrency, and they goof around with that as well. So they're saving up in a couple of different diversified ways, but
yeah. Well, Caleb, I appreciate you getting on here and chatting with me for an hour and talking a little bit about money. We are on here almost every Sunday night, usually starting pretty close to 7 p.m. Mountain Time. And I just want to encourage everyone to go to BibleThumperPodcast.com, and you can find a link to the YouTube page, the Facebook page, and you can get on anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can find it, or a link that'll take you there from that website. And please subscribe, like, share, comment on. It'll help whatever video you watch or podcast you listen to. It'll help it get in front of other people, and we always appreciate that. And we'll be back next Sunday. Oh boy, isn't next Sunday Christmas Eve? Yeah, that might be a tough
Christmas
one.
Eve, Christmas Day.
I think it's Christmas Eve.
Are you doing a big birthday bash for Jesus up there?
Yeah. We've already got several trees lined up in the living room, and we put down some really thick padded carpet that we can kneel on before those trees when we bow down and pray to them. So we'll be doing our normal, winter solstice tree worshiping ceremony on Christmas Eve, Yule log and everything. So happy Hanukkah. That just ended a couple days ago. We went through that. I took the whole week off. It was great. We had a lot of fun, played a lot of games as a family. And no, I might be working on Monday. But
the other day when you called me when I was in Idaho the other day, and you said Happy Hanukkah. I don't know if you heard it as I was hanging up, but my daughter said Merry Christmas. I was like, why did you say that? She's like, because I knew it was Patrick. I knew it would bug him.
Oh, my soul. I still say Merry Christmas to everybody. I don't, nobody knows what's going on.
You're Grinch inside.
Yeah, that I'm a crazy person. I don't expect anyone to know about Emperor Constantine and what happened and when the pagans, joined the Church of Rome. But anyway, long story short, next Sunday is Christmas Eve. I don't know if I'll get on here. I imagine that I won't, because we'll probably be over at my mom's house having dinner or something. I don't know if I'll get back here in time. So with that being said, you might not hear from me until, and then the next Sunday is New Year's Eve. Isn't that right? Oh, geez. I'm not going to be on here for like 3 weeks. All right. That's all I got for you, folks. Nothing helpful, nothing encouraging. Maybe I'll slip
get on next week and talk about Christmas.
That's not a bad idea.
You talk about Christmas.
It's
always encouraging.
Did you say you like listening to me talk about Christmas?
I said I'm pretty sure people really enjoy listening to you talk about Christmas. It's always encouraging.
So, I can hear the sarcasm in your voice, and I don't care, because 2 different people at my church have already asked me, hey, when are you going to do a Christmas message this year? I want to bring somebody. So I have folks lined up with friends waiting for me to teach on Christmas. Okay. So put that on your Christmas tree and smoke it. So anyway, thank you everyone for joining us. Have a happy holiday season. Hanukkah's over. So Merry Christmas. Enjoy your Yule log, and be sure to bow down to the tree when you go to put presents under it. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.